Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another TNG release. Yes, I finally have gotten my hands on the Therizinosaurus, and this actually looks really quite cool, though I think it looks a little better from the other images I've seen of it compared to the image here on the front of the box. But again, it's really cool to see a Therizinosaurus in the TNG line, and just in general, it's exciting, of course, to get a new TNG figure, as these sometimes can be a little tricky to get a hold of, though I have recently discovered that you can actually get most of the TNG figures on Amazon, and I have updated all of the different TNG listings with, listings to the Amazon pages for the figures. So if you want to grab them, again, check those out. A few aren't in stock, but they hopefully will be at some point. But you can see, again, we've got the shot here on the front of the box. You've also got Therizinosaurus, and again, the TNG logo up there. If you turn it to the side, you have some information on the figure, or I should say the species and stuff like that. And then if you turn it around again on the back, it's pretty much the same thing. So let's go ahead, pop the box open, and check out our Therizinosaurus. So here it is, and as you can see, it's a little bit too tall for the camera to capture. So there we go, we've got a better look at it here. And again, it looks pretty darn cool. A little different, I think, in coloration than what we had seen on the promotional images there on the front of the box, which is surprising because most times I think the TNG figures usually look pretty close to what we see on the prototypes, but not always. There are a few exceptions, like their Velociraptor Blue and stuff, but this one I feel like definitely looks a good bit different, a little bit lighter in coloration compared to what we saw on the prototype. I will also say that the figure is a good bit more impressive in size than I was expecting. Definitely a decently sized version of a Therizinosaurus. So pretty cool here at first glance, but of course the only way to truly tell is with a closer look, so let's jump to that right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Therizinosaurus, you can see it's got a pretty interesting look to it. You can also see we've got quite a bit of variation of color going on up here in the faces. You've got some purples, some blues, and some lighter tones, along with some darker variations of like browns showing up sporadically here on the lower jaw. Definitely a good bit of coloration here on the face of this one. I think a dark wash definitely could have done wonders for the skin areas of this dinosaur. Definitely would have helped to, make the skin texture stand out a bit more. You can see the nostrils right there. You can also see some okay looking skin texture. A little generic, I think, but not too bad. You've also got some wrinkling there in the eye socket area. The eye is painted with a black, then given an orange and a black pupil. That also looks pretty nice. There's even a little bit of darker coloration there, kind of outlining the upper part of the eye area, and then down along the side with a few scoots. So a little bit of extra variation of color there. We do have an articulated jaw for the figure, which is pretty cool. And when you look on the inside of the mouth, you can see the tongue is sculpted out in there, painted with a nice pinkish tone. Also has a bit of a glossy satin-like shine. There are teeth on the inside of the mouth of the Therizinosaurus, which you can see on the lower jaw are sculpted very, very small, but actually painted pretty decently for their size. And same thing basically going on here on the upper side of the inside of the mouth. As the hand over here hits the camera and moves it a little bit, you can even see the throat actually back there in the back of the mouth, which is really nice. As you move back here into the back of the head, you start to see the feathering pick up, and you can see we've got some darker, kind of vibrant blues up there on the top of that little crest of feathers that we have going on. There's also some black showing up here and there, and you can see the feather detail is actually really nicely sculpted. It has some very, very nice, very impressive fine detail in those areas. As you continue to move along, you can see this lighter blue following along under the darker blue, but we start to transition down into numerous variations of color as we lead down the neck. You've got like a light black striping. You also have variations of purples. I can even see some light, almost like light grays and whites and stuff showing up there, and you can see almost the same sort of thing going on here as you lead around to the throat, but instead of feathers we see skin here for the throat, but that striping leads through the throat, which is pretty cool. The skin texture, I think, actually looks a good bit nicer as you lead down here into the neck and throat of the dinosaur, more so than what we see up there in the face. But you can also see there is a turn to the head and neck of our Therizinosaurus. It's got its head turned toward the right, which is, again, nice to just add that little extra bit of life to the figure. Also, I forgot to mention how nicely sculpted the beak is. You can see the beak actually sports some really nice fine detail to it, very nice slight cracks and crevices and stuff, and just nice texturing. But there's also a darker tone that starts out on the inside of the beak and then leads out to a nice, kind of like an I don't even know how I term it, like a nice light brown, but then you also have a darker brown again for the tip of the beak. I really quite like that. But as you continue to move down through the course of the neck, again, when you look at the feather detail actually looks really, really well done. As you lead down a little bit further, you can see that the feathers become much more impressive in size. They become very wavy, very emu-like, and you can also see that we start to pick up some variations of browns leading down as well. Again, so now we've got quite a bit of variation of color here working its way through the feathered areas of the dinosaur, and even more so as we lead over here into the arms, because as you lead down into the arms, you can see the purplish tones, the brownish tones, the grayish tones. There's a whole lot going on, but we also have this really cool plumage leading off of the back of the arm here, which does sport a nice bluish tone as well as some white tones added in. And when you get nice and close and look at the actual fine detail of those feathers, again, they are really nicely sculpted. They actually look super impressive. And then you lead out, and as you get closer to the hand, you again return to that darker blue similar to what we had on the top of the head. But then as you lead out into the fingers, you can see we've got the skin texture returning. We have some nice scoots running down the fingers, some darker tones. Looks like we've got like some blacks running down those fingers. And then as we lead out into those trademark Therizinosaurus nails, you can see that we've got those light browns again, but they transition to a black as you lead out there toward the tips of those nails, and the detailing within the nails also again looks super, super nice. And what is cool about this figure is it does actually have articulation in the arms, only in the arms, but it does at least have some articulation, which is fun. But you can again see we've got nice paintwork for the underside as well, with some light browns, grays, and the bluish tones running along the feathering, and then again some variations of grays on the underside of the hands and fingers, and you can see even that is very nicely sculpted. And again, everything looks really good. I think TNG most often has excellent paint jobs on their figures. As you do continue to move down through the underside, you can see the chest. You've also got a nice big pudgy belly for our Therizinosaurus, the way it's often portrayed, and you can see the skin texture does look really good. We've got like a grayish dry brushing over top of a large portion of it, but you can even see some slight, really subtle stripes moving through. And again, you've got like lighter grays, maybe even like grayish washes kind of popping some of the areas of the skin texture, which does look really nice. As you lead down here along the side of the stomach, though, you can see the feathers kind of follow along the back rather than giving this like a really nice, mostly feathered look. The feathers aren't quite as intense as you see on most Therizinosaurus reconstructions, but you can see the skin texture does continue to look really nice here on the side of the stomach. Again, you've got more variation of color with some light browns and some blacks and stuff, as well as, again, those lighter tones kind of creeping through the skin of the dinosaur. You can even see the skin kind of stretching off of the stomach here with the positioning of the leg. As you lead down, the skin texture continues to look really good, I think, on the leg here. Again, you've got more really subtle striping. There is a lot of variation of color that has been added to this figure. You even have a little bit of purple on the back of the leg, but I almost feel like that might have been a paint mishap. I feel like maybe they were painting the feathers and a little bit got down there, but I could be wrong. Again, we kind of have like that grayish dry brushing here as you lead down through the leg. You can also see the muscle definition in both the thigh and calf region of our dinosaur, the knee right there in the front. And then as you lead down, you've got scoots running down the toes. They're not painted perfectly, and again, I feel like a dark wash or some sort of a wash down here would have really helped for the realism aspect of the feet, because the feet just look almost naked when it comes to paintwork. You can see the nails basically have like a slight variation of color running over the outer tips of the nails, and in fact, the dew claws don't really seem to have a whole lot of paintwork at all. So definitely could have taken a little more care when it comes to the paintwork of the nails and the feet, especially when the nails and the hands are painted so nicely. You would think that the nails and in general the feet would have been painted a little bit better. But as you do lead up here, again, you lead out into the tail, you've got more very vibrant tones of colors with variations of blues and purples and browns, orangish browns and stuff. You've got the black kind of running along, and again, look how nice the actual fine detail of the feathers looks. It is super, super impressive on this figure. And again, as you lead down through the upper side, you've got those shaggy feathers, again, leading out to the plumage there on the tail. Really nice display on the feathers as you lead out. Again, giving the dinosaur a very, very flashy look, I think. Of course, you're going to see pretty much the same thing over here on the other side for the figure. You're really not going to see much of anything different as you move through, except for the fact that the head is turned away from us now on this side. And again, the arms you would position yourself, so that's really up to you where those go. But the legs are almost in a neutral position. The dinosaur's just kind of standing here. The tail is just kind of sitting here back behind it, so not a whole lot going on as far as the positioning of the tail that's going to give it any more of a different look on this side compared to the initial side. But I will say, again, it is actually a really fun Therizinosaurus. Now, as far as a size goes, for a length, if we go from the tail to the snout, you are looking at just a hair under 9 3/4 inches, or around 24.5 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point would be the feathers on the top of the head, about 8 inches, or just shy of about 20.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our TNG Therizinosaurus, and you can see that the figure definitely has an impressive size, and in fact quite towers over our Papo T-Rex. And then, just in case you are a TNG collector, here is their woolly mammoth next to the Therizinosaurus, again to show you how much larger this figure is. We also have the TNG Carnotaurus here next to the Therizinosaurus. The Carno is actually one of the very few that I cannot find on Amazon anywhere, so this one's definitely still a mystery to me. But again, when it comes to telling you guys somewhere to buy it, but you can see if you do happen to have that Carnotaurus that it's, again, significantly smaller than our Therizinosaurus. And just in case you were curious as far as a size goes, next to the TNG Tyrannosaurus Rex, you can see again the Therizinosaurus is still larger, and in fact I would say is probably one of the largest figures of the entire line. I think maybe that Kong figure, the gorilla or chimpanzee or whatever they called it, might be one of the very few to be larger than this. However, I think this is probably the most interesting size comparison I can give you guys, would be the Papo Therizinosaurus next to the TNG version, because these figures are very similar. They're obviously not the same sculpt or anything. There have been quite a few figures from the TNG line that has looked a good bit similar to other figures, specifically I think Papo, and you can very clearly see that there was definitely, in my opinion, some influence here from the Papo version to the TNG version. Even if they are extremely different overall, you can just kind of see how they're, if we put the arms up on the TNG version, you can see how they're kind of similar overall, like the positioning of the body. They both have a slight right turn to the head and everything. Similar look as far as the way that they're feathered. Again, they kind of follow the same trend. Sort of similar poses as well overall. Just again, obvious differences between the two. Very, very different when it comes to the sculpt. But you can definitely see, in my opinion, some significant inspiration from the Papo version. So this TNG Therizinosaurus is, again, another pretty fun figure. There's definitely a few areas that could have been improved on this one. Specifically, the paintwork on the feet, I think, is the worst area of the figure as a whole. But in general, you look at the figure, you can see that very TNG style to it, which means that it kind of looks similar to a lot of the other figures that they have created. Whoever the artist is that's sculpting their dinosaurs, a lot of their dinosaurs have the same look and feel to them. And this, again, in my opinion, follows the same trend as most of their theropods, just looking like it has that same style of sculpt and detail. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's almost like a calling card to that artist and to this brand. But that also does mean that it doesn't exactly have the most, scientifically accurate appearance to it. And I don't really think you'll find that most times in TNG, unless you're looking at their prehistoric mammals. A lot of their dinosaurs aren't really what I would call accurate, but they are still really quite cool and often a bit stylized. And we have that same thing again here for this Therizinosaurus, but I think one of the most appealing aspects of this figure is the paint aspect, because the paint job of this one is really nicely done for the most part, outside of the feet. But I think the tones of color that they've chosen for this help to give the Therizinosaurus a really flashy look while still remaining quite naturalistic overall. And the paint application is super smooth almost the entire way through. Again, There are a few things, obviously I've mentioned the feet a few times, but the face I think could have used a wash of some kind as well, just to kind of amp up that detail as well. But overall, I still think the figure does look really, really nice when it comes to the paint. The figure is also very nicely sized as a whole, so that's always a fun thing, especially when you have the Papo version next to it. Obviously, they look a bit different, especially when it comes to, like the proportions. The head's a lot larger on the TNG version, but because they are so similarly sized, they do look pretty cool next to each other. But again, it is a very nice looking figure in my opinion. Clearly not the most accurate Therizinosaurus out there, but it's very nicely sculpted for the most part, nicely painted for the most part, and overall is a pretty cool Therizinosaurus figure. Again, a nice alternative to so many others that are out there. So if you are interested in picking one up for yourself, I actually got mine through my good friend Dino Mike Mac. However, after I got it from him, I did realize that this one was on Amazon as well. It's right around the $30 price range last time I checked, so if you are interested, check the link that I will include in the description. Go grab that Therizinosaurus for yourself, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.